Alright, so here we have hero worship. This is one of the best examples of something that would be super easy to adapt to a TTRPG. And at the same time, there are certain aspects of it that I think you should change, but not major things, just minor tweaks to massage it so that your players aren't going to, you know, go the obvious route of like, oh yes, the magic button is over here. Because again, like the in-universe logic behind all of the stuff that happens in here is paper thin. I'll get to the specifics as we go, though. So just keep that in mind. In-universe logic behind how everything works in here is paper thin, and for that reason alone, you should feel free to tweak things. Anyways, so the, the plot is very simple. It's, the crew of the Enterprise is hailed by Starbase 514 that the research vessel Vico, which was exploring a black cluster, is missing, and they want them to go look for it. They give them all of the information available about where the Vico was, and so the Enterprise follows where the Vico went, hoping to find it, and maybe, um, rescue people or something. So they actually get to where the Vico is very quickly, and they find it a demolished wreck. Now, this is something where you, as the person doing this, should feel free to use your own um, discretion as to what nature of damage to have, because here you see a rather large chunk of the saucer blown off in a way that makes it look like something like half the saucer is maybe uninhabitable, or because like one of the key things here is that this ship's main power is shot. It's not completely without power, but the power relays in this ship have been badly damaged. I mean, like you see here, it's like the Bassard collectors and the nacelles are gone, exploded. The deflector dish equally exploded. And there's hull breaches like all over the place. Most of them are small. And then you have this really, really big one here. And of course, there's the breaches and these locations. And it looks like there's several other breaches in other places that are not as noticeable, though. Like here, this is the bridge cake. And it's shot. Let's see here. Timothy, that's what his name was. Timothy, his father, was in the bridge cake when the bridge got domed. Didn't make it. Timothy is actually, to my understanding, the only known survivor. He, despite being a 10-year-old child, was essential to figuring out what's going on because of the fact he's the only living witness. And due to the extensive damage to the ship's systems, trying to figure it out by just looking at the ship's log wasn't as easy as you'd think, because the computers aren't working properly. It's hard to be sure if you're getting the right section of the log, even. You know, that sort of thing. At any rate, though, so let's back up a bit. What is a black cluster, and why was it being analyzed? Well, one, the Federation doesn't fully understand them. The in-universe logic of what black clusters are apparently evolved during the writing of this, because of the fact that black clusters represent something that is not known to exist in the real world, and the writers had assorted ideas about what how to describe it so that it's something that sounds plausible but not stupid. Like, one of the ideas that was only in a draft script and not in the final version is the idea that the black cluster is something that's like an uber black hole, where it's a black hole if the black hole got even worse. Yeah, like the object went beyond the black hole stage, which, okay, what's that? At any rate, though, what we do know about the black cluster is that while from a distance it doesn't have a lot of light in it, it does have a little bit. It has a bunch of murky clouds, but it does have non-light energy in rather significant amounts. And it does say that it's protostars collapsing is what created it in mass. And one idea here is to say that it's actually a region of space dominated by a group of neutron stars that happen to be bouncing energy off of each other. And that this is what's creating the dangerous navigational effects, is that it's the energy bouncing off the neutron stars that's doing strange things, and things that are difficult to predict without seeing them happen first. Because no one guessed prior to the Vico being trashed. It wasn't even completely destroyed, just heavily damaged. Let's see, did they tow it back? I need to double check that. Oh, the wiki article does not state whether the Vico was salvaged or not. To me, it looked like it was in a situation where it would have potentially been salvageable. Oh, and the episode ends without actually explaining whether they try to salvage it or not. Okay, Anyways, though, so, the episode logic is something I, as a teenager watching this, thought was silly. Is because the fact that the intensity of the wave is somehow the way it's explained in the episode is that the shield on the ship is somehow disturbing its environment, causing energy waves to hit the ship, kind of like an echo almost of the ship's shield power. And these echoes, though, are actually stronger than the ship's shield, so causing the echoes is actually going to eventually destroy you because the echoes are more powerful. Well, yeah, and scaling it up means that you're burning a stupid amount of power to increase the ship's shielding, which is not actually going to save you. Anyways, so the flaw I always found with the logic is that it's the echo version of the explanation doesn't make sense when the wave is already approaching you and about to hit you. You already created the wave. I would actually just say that it's just a weird energy frequency thing that causes your ship's shields to implode, and while the ship will attempt to reestablish shielding automatically and mostly succeed, the implosion effect, when it happens, can cause catastrophic damage to the ship. And of course, the more energy you put into the ship's shielding, the more catastrophic it is. It makes more sense than the explanation they actually went with. But this is simply a clumsy explanation. It doesn't it's not quite the same as a bad concept. It's just a clumsy explanation of the concept, which unfortunately happens in science fiction a lot. It's like good ideas get explained in ways that make them sound dumb despite not actually being bad ideas. Anyway, though, the basic gist of this episode, though, is a pretty obvious fetch quest kind of thing. It's like, hey, we lost contact with a ship. Go figure out what happened to them. And, oh, also, it has the plot device of Victorium. It's something that they cannot beam through. Interesting. Which, it is actually mentioned in multiple times in multiple episodes that it's not actually possible to get a transporter signal to literally anywhere you want in a ship, even a friendly ship with the shields down. It's part of the logic behind why they use transporter pads, is that those are places that you know are safe. Trying to beam someone out of a random EPS conduit isn't necessarily going to work. And this is simply that plot element given a name, Victorium. Yeah, we don't actually know what it is. It is, however, stated to be an alloy, not a specific element. Yeah, that's all we get. However, again, it's a recurring plot element related to beaming things. You don't necessarily have the ability to just lock onto anything and everything you want. And in this case, they had to physically board the badly damaged SS Vico in order to rescue Timothy. And of course, collect whatever information they can from the ship's computer. Do. Oh yeah, this is actually another interesting point. This isn't actually true. See, when they're getting information out of Timothy, Timothy doesn't actually tell them the truth in all of the times they're asking him questions. And they have to figure out whether Timothy is actually telling them the truth. And that's the sort of plot point that you could tinker with in a TTRPG, is that, okay, you have a witness. Is the witness actually making factually correct statements? Should you take the witness's statements at face value, or should you question what the witness is saying and verify it before attempting to use the information? Which, in this case, if they'd simply left immediately after grabbing Timothy, everything would have been fine. They probably could have towed the Vico out of the black cluster before they got hit with a wave, and it would have been fine. Oh, also, yeah, remember what I said earlier about the ship's power systems damage? Erasing 83% of its data, including sensor logs. In other words, the part of the information they really want to get out of the ship's computer banks is not there. And of course, massive damage to the ship that, okay, maybe possibly it's this, maybe possibly it's that. And thus, the episode is actually an investigation episode, is that something happened. Your mission is to figure out what happened. The threat, of course, is that if you guess wrong in terms of figuring out what happened, you die, maybe. And that is something that is something that's very much a thing you could do. And the whole thing with Timothy, the basic idea of the Timothy character is fine. You know, lone survivor who has, you know, emotional issues because his family is dead, or and so on and so forth. You don't need to have it be a child. You could have it just be like some random ensign who happened to be in a location that didn't lose life support along with the rest of the ship, or just, you know, this particular room didn't have the atmosphere get lost along with most of the rest of the deck because, you know, the door happened to be closed at random or something like that. All sorts of things you could do to have like one survivor or only a handful of survivors. Like, oh, that is actually another plot point and something you rarely see Star Trek actually play with because of the fact that they like to make it quick and easy. But one of the things that you could do in situations like this is have the crew scan the ship from more than one angle, because of the fact that what I was saying about the Victorium earlier is that Victorium prevented them from being able to beam in and out of certain locations on the ship. Well, apply the same logic to sensors. It's like a simple sensor sweep isn't necessarily going to give you 100% of the information you want, especially when it's a damaged ship that has EPS conduits sparking and flickering that in ways that they're not meant to do so. Maybe possibly your initial sensor sweep won't give you all of the information. And if it's a badly damaged ship with casualties on board that you're, you know, need to rescue, maybe possibly you need to, you know, scan the ship looking for survivors more than once from different angles or something like that. Fun idea for doing a TTRPG when you're having this sort of thing. Like the Black Cluster too. Okay, so I kind of touched on this earlier, but explaining the logic of how the Black Cluster works, due to the fact that it's sci-fi mumbo jumbo, you can kind of sort of just make up whatever you want the Black Cluster to do. The in-universe logic for this was uh, paper thin, and this is the only episode where black clusters get used as a plot point. So the idea of a black cluster having unpredictable effects and things that aren't known to exist until you actually come there and see them in person is a workable idea. You don't, it's not a malevolent entity. No, it's just a natural hazard, but it's a huge natural hazard that represents unknown dangers. And another fun thing with a black cluster idea is that maybe possibly different regions in the black cluster have different hazard effects associated with them. Just, you know, an idea to ponder. Anyway, though, again, random space hazards. They're very much, random space hazards are absolutely a Star Trek thing. I mean, it's basically the negative space wedgie trope. Except that in this case, the negative space wedgie is called a black cluster, and what it does to you, yeah, might kill you. Anyway, though, like I said before, this is one of the episodes where adapting it into a TTRPG would actually be boringly simple. Half or more of the episode's runtime was actually just Data interacting with Timothy. Like, there's a handful of things that get brought up, people seen in the episode that are unique to this episode, but it's mostly just Timothy and Data trying to get information out of Timothy about what happened to the Vico, because people are. The entire point behind being here is to figure out what happened to the Vico, so they're not leaving until they do. And that is a very simple mission to give to your players. Will they succeed? Well, have fun with that one. Alrighty then. See you guys next.